about the future. We are stronger as a community. We are stronger together. You are part of a community that welcomes all individuals, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, income, ability, or spiritual beliefs, and this is a core part of our value system. This is as important now as it has ever been. Whether in person or via live stream, we share this precious time and space. Let us rejoice in our time together. We welcome Barbara Espinosa from Green Roots, who will join our service today, providing the third reflection. Barbara graduated from Boston University School of Public Health, where she earned a master's in public health in environmental health. She is passionate about making science and health information accessible to everyone. She is working with Chelsea and East Boston residents to promote health equity. We will learn more about this later in the service. Welcome. Now a few announcements. This Friday night, January 31st, is the second of our wonderful Jazz in the Sanctuary concerts with John Kramer and his wonderful musical guests. It starts at 8 p.m., so please make sure to put it on your calendar. Next Sunday after service will be Sunday, also known as the Winchester Unitarian Society Community Fair. So join us downstairs for ice cream with all the toppings, that's the Sunday part, and the opportunity to learn more about what our various committees are doing to advance the goals and values of our Winchester Unitarian Society community. Please also look at highlights for more weekly announcements. I would now like to invite Christopher Weigand and Janet Nelson forward to the lectern to make a couple of brief announcements.
Good morning. I'm Chris Weigand from the Social Action and Outreach Committee. The topic of next week's service is generosity. We will hold a non-perishable food collection as people are entering the sanctuary next week. We request that everyone bring at least one food item if possible. Following the offertory collection today, we will hand out suggested food items to bring next week. Thank you.
Hi. The book club offered by the Fellowship Committee will have its first meeting next Sunday at 12:30 after the Sunday, to discuss this year's UUA Common Read, Authentic Selves, Celebrating Trans and Non-Binary People and Their Families. You can help us choose the next two books by filling out the survey and highlights. Bookends now has copies of this discounted if you mention the WUS book group. And as many individuals tell their stories in this, you don't actually have to read the whole thing cover to cover. So we hope you'll join us next week. Thanks.
Thank you both. Our invocation and benediction today are based on the words of Susan Mankar Seal. We speak to the God, the goddess, the spirit of life, the eternal. We speak to the mysterious thread that connects us, one to the other and to the universe. We speak to the deep wisdom at the center of our beings. We embody the yearning of all people to touch each other more deeply, to hear each other more keenly, to see each other's joys and sorrows as our own, and know that we are not alone unless we create solitude for ourselves. And even then, community awaits us. Out of our yearnings, we have come to this religious community. Now, let us worship together.
Chalice lighting. We honor the independent web of all existence. With reverence for the great web of life and with humility, we acknowledge our place in it. We covenant to protect Earth and all beings from exploitation. We will create and nurture sustainable relationships of care and respect, mutuality, and justice. We will work to repair harm and damaged relationships.
All right, we're adjusting. All right. This Sunday, we have the pleasure of presenting an important book to the members of our Neighboring Faiths class. This book on world religions is a tool for them to use in their continuing exploration of the many faith traditions in our communities and beyond. It is also a keepsake, a reminder of the hopefully meaningful experiences they take from this class. The Neighboring Faiths curriculum offers an opportunity for closer examination of faith formation at the level of the individual, the family, and the society in which we and others live. The class began this church year by exploring Unitarian Universalism, including learning about our values and sources. We now will embark on an exploration of the Abrahamic faiths of Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, and we'll be visiting with people of these faith traditions to learn from them directly about how they worship. As their teacher, I can say that it has been so much fun to explore with this group of kids. They are snarky, creative, a little rebellious, mostly in a good way, and very thoughtful. Sam Wilson, our Director of Youth and Children's Ministries, will now present the books.
On behalf of our Neighboring Faiths class and our congregation, I thank you, Brenna, for serving as their guide to this moment and for continuing to walk with them along the path ahead. I'm delighted to introduce our Neighboring Faiths participants, Abby McVeigh, Lewis Spencer, and May Darialat. Unfortunately, we're missing Eva Grebe and Mirabelle Carrier-Ladd, who are also part of this class. Abby is in her second year of Neighboring Faiths, so she's here to support her fellow classmates. Lua and May, in a moment, Brenna will present you with a book about the world's most spiritual paths. Think of this book like a passport, granting you permission to leave the place you call home, to learn about the world and the different people in it. In your travels through new traditions, we ask that you meet the world with an open mind and an open heart. You know well our UU values of love, equity, and pluralism call us to be respectful of everyone, kind and fair to all, and curious about others and other ways of being in the world. When you travel far away, those you meet may have never met someone from the Boston area. Likewise, when you visit another faith community, they may have never met a Unitarian Universalist before. As always, strive to be a good guest and representative of our faith tradition. Neighboring Faiths families, your presence here is a testament to your role in supporting your children's spiritual exploration. As you accompany your child during these visits, we ask that you too be brave. Explore along with your child, seize this opportunity to foster your own curiosity and build your own knowledge about others living in the wider community. So explore, like a kid, without fear or prejudgment. So now as I call your name, please come forward with your family. Lewis Spencer, we present you with this book about the many faiths of the world, as varied as the people living in it. May Darialat, we present you with this book, a window into the many names people give to the sacred. You received this book with my blessing, Brenna's blessing, and the blessing of your family. I now invite the gathered congregation to offer their blessing by joining with me in reading the Unison Blessing, printed in your order of service, and appearing on your screen for those at home. Give you a moment to find those. All right. We wish you well on your journey. May your exploration bring you greater insight, understanding, and grace. We now invite you all to return to your seats as we sing our opening hymn. In the spirit of crossing spiritual borders and in hopes that all religious explorers are received with joy, we remember that love is at the center. The words are in your orders of service.
Okay, I would like to invite anyone who is young or young at heart to come forward for a story. And this is going to be interesting because I'm going to have to do it from up here. It's going to be interesting. All right, so I'm going to read the words, but you can pay attention to Maya and Caroline down here. Otto, can you sit down on the floor so that you can see Maya and Caroline better? All right. All right, have a seat, everybody, so we can begin. Who remembers our UU value of interdependence? Do you remember? It's our sixth value, and we trace, what do we trace on our palm? We trace a web. What does that web stand for? Does anybody remember what it symbolizes? It symbolizes connection, that we're all connected to everything and everyone, right? A famous naturalist named John Muir lived a long time ago, and he had a lot of wise things to say. And a lot of people, including UUs, listened. One thing he talked about was how everything is connected. He said something like, when we tug at a single thing in nature, we find it attached to the rest of the world. So I'm going to tell you a story about how one single tug, one single small change made a world of difference to many things that were connected, even if we couldn't see how at first. So I'm going to need your help with this story. I'll need you to make some sounds and some motions to help tell parts of the story. And we'll let you know what I need you to do and when we hold up these pictures. Maya and Caroline are going to hold up pictures, and you're going to do the sound that I tell you to do or the motion that I tell you to do whenever we hold up the sign, okay? All right. So, who has heard of Yellowstone National Park? Lots of people. It's a massive park in the northwest of the United States. It has mountains, valleys, prairies, forests, rivers, canyons, and lots of animals. Way back in the early 1900s, so about 100 years ago, wolves were hunted almost to extinction in the U.S. The last wolf in Yellowstone was killed in 1926. So after 1926, there were no wolves in Yellowstone Park. About 70 years later, in 1995, naturalists reintroduced a small pack, 14 gray wolves, into Yellowstone. They weren't sure what was going to happen. They had some ideas, but they weren't really sure. So let me hear you make your best wolf howl. Lovely. The best wolves. Great job. Now, most of us know that wolves are predators, right? Predators are animals that kill other animals for food. Because there were no wolves around in Yellowstone for a long time, the deer population had become huge. Humans had tried but hadn't been able to control the population of deer. The deer ran amok in the park. Now, tap on the ground like lots of deer running amok. Yes, perfect. Now, deer are herbivores, which means what? They eat plants, right. Now, there were so many deer in the park that they had eaten almost all of the plants. So many of the plants were gone. And when the wolves came in, they did kill some of the deer and ate them. But they had a bigger effect than that because by just being in the park, they made the deer move around in a different way. The deer avoided going to certain parts of the park, like the valleys and the gorges, where they could be easily trapped by the wolves. And in those places, forests started to grow. Trees like aspen and cottonwood and willow trees started to grow high and thick. Wave your hands in the air like willow branches, waving in the breeze. Do you know what animal likes willow branches? Beavers. So the beavers started to eat the willow branches, which had become so plentiful, and they started making more lodges in the rivers. Can you clap like the sound of a beaver tail hitting the water? Right. The beaver lodges and dams made little pools in the river for more wildlife to make a home. Animals like muskrats and reptiles and fish and ducks. Can you quack like a duck? Quack, 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 quack. Perfect. Also, lots and lots of songbirds came back to these areas. Can I hear you whistle or make a bird call? Chickadee-dee-dee. The wolves killed coyotes. Oh. As a result, more rabbits and mice were living in the park, which meant the number of hawks, weasels, foxes, and badgers, all animals that ate rabbits and mice, started to rise. The wolves would eat their prey and leave some for other animals, scavengers, to eat. So eagles and ravens came, as well as bears. Can I hear you growl like a bear? Rawr. Oh, I can't hear it. Okay, that's better. Bear numbers also increased because there were more plants, so more berries for them to eat. As if this weren't enough of a change by the wolves, they also changed something that you wouldn't think they could. they changed the rivers. Can you raise your hands and wiggle your fingers like the ripples on a river? Now, the wolves didn't do anything to the rivers directly. Because the wolves changed where the deer went, the plants and trees grew back, which made stronger riverbanks that kept the river from overflowing and widening. So the rivers didn't meander as much. They flowed in a narrower channel. More pools formed, which was great for even more animal habitats. So in just 30 years, the 14 gray wolves that were first reintroduced and their children not only transformed the number and variety of animals in the park, but also the physical parts, the forests, the valleys, and the rivers. So let's see and hear all the things that these wolves, this single thing, tugged at and changed for the better when we hold up the signs. Quack, 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 quack. Great job. So let's try to always remember that we're all connected to everyone and everything in the world. Let's remember that and let that value guide us, guide how we walk through the world. I invite the grown-ups to sing the children and teachers to religious education. The words are in your order of service.
We now come to the centering time in our service. All are invited into ritual, kindling of the light, a time to light a candle here or at home, signifying a joy, sorrow, or concern you carry within. At that time, if you would like a candle brought to you, please raise your hand and I will bring it to you. After we kindle the light, we will be together in a time of shared silence, out of which we will sing hymn number 86 in the gray hymnal, Blessed Spirit of My Life.
Inside the front cover of our order of service, one will always find our mission. Marcy read it aloud in her community welcome. It begins, "The Winchester Unitarian Society is a welcoming, caring community devoted to spiritual growth, social transformation, and environmental responsibility." Today, we hope to further each of these three mission goals. First, you heard a great story about the interdependence. We want to highlight that newly revisited UUA shared value, interdependence, in its spiritual roots. And secondly, by listening to a recent and local true story, I think reflects the power of implicitly applying the interdependence value to good effect. Unlike other religious traditions, Unitarian Universalism's mission and purpose is housed in the UUA bylaws. Thus, its Article 2 describes UU faith and outlines its purpose. At the June 2024 General Assembly, UUs voted to replace the existing 7 principles and 6 sources language in its bylaws with love and the 6 shared values: interdependence, pluralism, justice, transformation, generosity, and equity. This morning's chalice lighting was the meaning of interdependence in its long form, as passed at General Assembly. Sue Doublers told me one must say things at least twice for them to really be heard. Of course, she's told me this several times. So here is the UU interdependence shared value again. We honor the interdependent web of all existence. With the reverence for the great web of life and with humility, we acknowledge our place in it. We covenant to protect Earth and all beings from exploitation. We will create and nurture sustainable relationships of care and respect, mutuality, and justice. We will work to repair harm and damaged relationships. This UU shared value of interdependence cares about both the means and ends of environmental responsibility. Our reading today will speak to the theological roots of our UU shared value of interdependence. These roots acknowledge that this ideal has historically greatly exceeded UU practice. As some of you all know all too well, it's exceeded my practice too, especially when I'm patiently trying to honor the interdependent web of all existence. A spiritual story is one of transformation, and every challenge carries the seeds of spiritual growth. Our third reflection today is the story of Green Root's role in channeling Chelsea and East Boston's distress and having much of the state's ugliest and most polluting energy and transportation infrastructure, and how these communities were transformed successfully to change themselves and eventually become the catalyst for the recent significant reform of Massachusetts laws about the siting of essential energy infrastructure. Today's centering thought is, better was a poor and wise youth than an old and foolish king who no longer knew how to take advice. This is a caution even for non-kings. The Green Root story may inspire us to be a better and more impactful version of ourselves as we further our 3 mission goals: spiritual growth, social transformation, and environmental responsibility.
Many of our Universalist and Unitarian forebears viewed humans of European heritage, particularly Protestant Christian ones, as closer to God, and thus at the apex of all life. We have since declared correctives to this arrogance, but we are still a long way from making effective reparations for all that was taken and lost. While acknowledging this tragedy and complexity, we have the Universalists and Unitarians of the 19th century to thank for solidifying the place of science as a foundational source of our theology. Science has helped us understand the radically interconnected nature of all existence, as well as humankind's dependence on the Earth's ecosystems, from the microscopic to the massive, for our very survival. Our theology has evolved, and our understanding of humankind's place in it has become more right-sized. In addition, increasing religious plurality in our congregations has brought in perspectives and practices from earth-based religions of many kinds. These earth-based religions amplify an understanding of humankind, and they are part of the great interconnected web of all existence. This core value of interdependence in Unitarian Universalism stems from our unique theological heritage. It has a vital role to play in a time when all humans of power and means in industrialized countries are needed to take action. We need to curb global heating to avert the worst scenarios of suffering and harm.
Hi, everyone. My name is Barbara Espinosa. I am here to talk to you about environmental justice and community building and community organizing. The reason why I feel confident talking to you about this is because I work at Green Roots. Green Roots is a community that aims to address environmental injustices in Chelsea and East Boston. So I figured it could be fun to get started by telling you a little bit about the demographics of Chelsea and East Boston. So Chelsea and East Boston are relatively small. Chelsea is 1.8 square miles, and East Boston is 5 miles, taking into account that about 30% of East Boston is taken up by the airport, though. Both of these communities are very, very crowded with a lot of multiple family homes and multiple families living in one home. So Chelsea has about 45,000 residents, and East Boston has about 55,000 residents. In Chelsea, 79% roughly are ethnic minorities. In East Boston, about half are ethnic minorities. In Chelsea, 18% of people live below the poverty line. In East Boston, about 17% of people live below the poverty line. So both of these communities have a lot of immigrant populations, like I mentioned, Honduran, Salvadorian, Ethiopian, Haitian, and have a high percentage of people who don't have English as their first language. So in Massachusetts, when we think about environmental justice, there's, I think, 3 ways that an environmental justice community is defined. One is by the percentage of people living below the poverty line, the percentage of people that don't speak English as a first language, and I believe the percentage of people, the people of color, but don't quote me on the last one because I'm not sure. And the point is that under all of these 3 definitions, Chelsea and East Boston fall under the definition of an environmental justice community. So I started working at Green Roots about 2.5 years ago. Before that, I was at the School of Public Health at BU, where I was learning about environmental health and all these other things that affect, that we were talking about, like, oh my gosh, air quality, water quality, all these different things in the environment that affect human health. And there was this one lecture in particular that I really like to think about. We were talking about road salt, like the road that we put on the floor to prevent accidents in the winter. Road salt is very good at preventing accidents, but turns out that it can be a little harmful for human health. And we were talking about this as if it was something that was happening far away. I didn't know this at the time, but Chelsea, a little under 3 miles of the school where I was studying this, is home to about 90% of the salt in New England. And for the people that live so close to the salt piles, it can be really harmful for human health. They report high levels of asthma. They report that their homes rust and they get damaged faster than in other places. The same thing happens with their cars, if they're lucky to have one. They report other respiratory conditions that are not as common in other places that are not near the salt piles. And we were talking about this in class like it was something happening far away, when in reality it was across the river from the BU School of Public Health. And other things that were also kind of talked about in a very abstract way were things like lead, for example, affecting communities right around the corner. So I started working at Green Roots, and one of the first projects that I worked on was about air quality, outdoor air quality. And this was in partnership with Northeastern University, and the idea was to establish 100 air quality monitors around the city of Chelsea. Northeastern was doing a very similar project in Brookline at the same time. And we would talk to the people in Brookline, and it was kind of crazy how different my experience was as the project manager for this versus the project manager in the city of Brookline. In the city of Brookline, this whole process took about 2 months. They asked the city officials if they could install air quality sensors in their city poles, and they said yes, and under 2 months, 100 monitors were up and ready to go. In Chelsea, they came and made the same ask, but turns out that the city doesn't own the poles. Utility companies do, and they don't want anybody monitoring the air in Chelsea because of the pollution that's there. So they immediately said no. And we started looking at other options, like where can we put them? We put them in community gardens, we put them in community homes, in shared housing options. We put them in other community-based organizations. And eventually the city was able to share the street lights with us. Those are owned by the city, and we were able to place a lot of our quality monitors in street lights. But this took 2.5 years. Today, we have 78 monitors after I've been working on this for 2 years. In Brooklyn, it took 2 months, and it all comes down to who owns the poles. And it comes down to that when the poles were installed in Chelsea a few decades ago, the city didn't have the resources to buy those poles that are rightfully theirs. They didn't have the opportunity to buy those back from the utility companies. So that was kind of my first experiences working at Green Roots. But there's this other project that is really, really interesting as well, and we want to recognize that although outdoor air quality is very important, people spend 90% of their time indoors. So how do you address air quality indoors when it comes down to things like overcrowded housing, and old housing stock that doesn't have enough ventilation, and gas pipes that were not built correctly? How do you fix a problem that is so systemic and that it affects so many people? So I've been working on this problem since I started at Green Roots, and 2.5 years later, I still don't have a clear path forward. We've done a lot of exploring. We've installed air filters in homes, but we found that they're loud and clunky and they take up electricity. And for people that are already burdened by energy costs, that can be a big no-no. Or sometimes people just don't want to use them because they're loud. We've also tried to increase ventilation and tried to encourage people to keep their windows open and the wind flowing through their homes. But in a state where half of the time the weather is either really hot or really cold, that's not entirely feasible. And we still don't have a path forward. But what we do have is that in this moment, we are filing for 2 bills that can help the outdoor air quality and indoor air quality change significantly. So when we think about environmental justice, we really want to think about it as kind of like a people-centered process. We're not looking for justice for the environment. We're looking for justice in the people that live in an environment that was polluted based on the decisions of other people. And we're trying to fix that with these 2 bills that we're trying to pass. But I really like what the minister said about interdependence. When we improve the environment for people, we also improve the environment for wildlife and for plants and for all these other things that ultimately make it better for everyone. Like going back to the salt piles thing, when there is too much salt in the water, it corrodes piping in homes, which if they are made of lead, it increases people's exposure to lead, which is really harmful for human health. It also causes wildlife to leave, like marine life to leave. It also destroys the homes of people that live nearby. It causes so many issues, and if we're able to redistribute this issue into many different communities and share the burden together, it makes such a big difference for people and wildlife around. So as I guess if I can share one message with you as kind of like this whole thing is that Chelsea is special. Chelsea is so special. East Boston are so special. People are resilient. People fight for what they need. People are extremely powerful and strong. But there are so many communities like Chelsea and East Boston that unfortunately don't have the same resources for fighting. They don't have community-based organizations leading the way. They don't have empowered mothers and fathers wanting better for their children. People may not have time for fight for what they need. So what we really need is to cause systemic change, to make it better in Massachusetts for Lawrence, for Everett, for Revere, for all communities that have similar issues than Chelsea, but maybe don't have the time to fight about them. I am very passionate about air quality in these communities, and if you ever want to chat with me about it, see how you can get involved, my contact info is in the Green Roots website. Please find me. And yeah, it'd be awesome if we can get some of the people here to get involved in air quality legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara Espinosa. It's so important, I think, for our community to know what's happening out there in the world. One hopeful goal for our church is to encourage all who gather here to grow more generous in spirit and in action. This is the great end of all the world's faith traditions, to bring the human being closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. We are now asked to make an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that will help support this self-supporting church and its many ministries. Our Share the Plate offering this morning will be to Green Roots, which Barbara so eloquently described as it engages and empowers residents in the frontline communities of Chelsea and East Boston on a broad range of issues, from food justice to climate resiliency, waterfront access, and much, much more. To prepare for climate change, it implements strategies to reduce the impacts of urban heat islands, enacts nature-based solutions to reduce flooding, and effectively engages with stakeholders. The offering will now be generously given and gratefully received. Those who wish to do so are invited to join in the unison affirmation. We gather not for ourselves alone, but to use our common power to build the beloved community within and beyond these walls. We recreate and reaffirm this covenant this day to make justice flourish, to practice compassion amidst difference, and to embody transformative love. Now let us join in singing together hymn number 207, Earth Was Given a Garden, in your gray hymnal. May we help each other to proclaim the possibilities we see, to create the community we desire, to worship what is worthy in our lives, to teach the truth as we know it, and to serve with justice in all the ways that we can, to the end that our yearning is assuaged and our life fulfilled in one another. Let us go now into the silence of the faith that is unique to each of us and still the same. Barbara Espinosa. You too, I thought it all worked out.